A brand new poll suggests that Donald Trump's well within striking distance in the Democrat state of Virginia. What is up, people of the internet? It is me, Real American, back in with a new video, and today we have to talk about the 2024 presidential election because it appears that Donald Trump is surging in the Commonwealth of Virginia. That's right, according to a brand new poll that was just released a little while ago, Donald Trump is within striking distance in Virginia. This isn't a poll from North Carolina, not from Pennsylvania, not from Michigan, no, Virginia. A state that most of us thought was gone for the Republican Party is out of the blue very competitive according to not just one poll, but there's been a bunch of polling out of Virginia the past couple of months that shows a very competitive race. Yeah, Virginia, not North Carolina, not Pennsylvania, Virginia. A state that back in 2020 voted for Biden by over 10 points. As of now, according to the University of Mary Washington, which by the way, overstated Biden's support in Virginia by like 5 points back in 2020. They have the race within 2 points. And when you include Jill Stein, Cornel West, they even included RFK for whatever reason. But either way, they have the race within a single point. The margin of error is 3.5. So that means there's a possibility that Trump could actually win Virginia, according to this poll. And I know that sounds crazy because, like I said, this is a Biden plus 10 state. This isn't Biden plus 3, Biden plus 4. It's a Biden plus 10 state. And most of us thought it was gone for Republicans. Before 2021, everyone agreed that this was a Democrat state. There is no pathway for any Republican, let alone Trump, in Virginia. But ever since Glenn Youngkin won back in 2021, it appears that Republicans have been gaining momentum in Virginia. In 2022, they did a good job. In 2023, they barely lost the state legislature. But now there are polls showing the race within a point. So I think it's time we look at Virginia because we've had a bunch of polls out of Virginia for the past 2 to 3 months that all show virtually the same thing, outside of like one that had Harris up by 15 points or something crazy like that. Outside of that one outlier, every single poll was Harris plus 1, Harris plus 2, Harris plus 3, maybe a Harris plus 4, which for Virginia standards is awful. And we cannot ignore it any longer because this is the latest poll. This isn't from 3 months ago. This is right before the debate, so you could argue, well, maybe the presidential debate, it caused a shift in Virginia. I guess that's a possibility. But there's been some polls released that show, not really. There's been no change post-debate, but I guess it's possible. But either way, this poll has the race within 2 points. And this is not from a Republican pollster. The University of Mary Washington, like I said, back in 2020, they had Biden winning the state by like 16 points or something crazy like that. So they overstated Joe by 5 to 6 points just 4 years ago. But now, they have the race within the margin of error. If the same miss occurs, you know what that means? If the exact same miss occurs, that's a Trump lead in Virginia. I'm not saying that's going to happen. But now do you understand why this is a big deal? That by some miracle, Trump actually has some kind of pathway in Virginia, which I'm not saying it's likely. I still think at the end of the day, Harris is going to win Virginia by a couple of points at the bare minimum. But even then, if you're a Democrat, you do not celebrate to that. In fact, you start to panic because if you're barely winning Virginia, what do you think's happening in other swing states like North Carolina, like Georgia, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Michigan? What do you think's happening there? Like, if Virginia's this close, do you really think Harris is going to win North Carolina? And that's why this is a big deal, because you look at the Electoral College, and if Virginia is really shifting 7 to 8 points Republican in just 4 years, let's say, okay, Harris wins it by a couple of points. Do you really think Trump's down in Georgia or North Carolina? No. Even a state like Arizona, you could argue, if Trump's winning Virginia or down in Virginia by like 2 to 3 points, he's probably in a good situation in Arizona. And at that point, all Trump needs is Pennsylvania, or even Wisconsin, which we all know they are admitting to CNN that Harris is in a bad situation in Pennsylvania. You see the problem? Because even if Trump doesn't win Virginia, which I'm not saying it's going to happen, I still think that even this poll might be a bit bullish for Trump. That's a possibility. It might understate Trump by a little bit. But this is not the only poll showing this. Roanoke College, like a couple weeks ago, they had the race within 2. So if it's a bunch of pollsters that usually have okay track records showing a close race, if not understating Trump by a little bit, Harris is a big problem here. Not just, oh, she's doing a point worse. She is doing 7 to 8 points worse in Virginia. And at that point, I don't see how she wins the Electoral College. Do you really think Trump's going to lose North Carolina? By some miracle, if he comes very close to winning Virginia, or hell, outright just wins Virginia. Which, that's not going to happen, but if this actually occurred, where Trump won Virginia and lost North Carolina, I think a lot of people's brains would just explode. So that's why I don't think it's going to happen, because it's so unlikely that Virginia shifts 10 points right, but then North Carolina shifts 5 points left. I guess it's technically possible, but I find that such an unlikely scenario. I'm not even going to consider it as a possibility. But if Trump just outright wins Virginia, well, he's winning everything else. There's no way he's losing Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Nevada, if he in fact wins Virginia. And hell, you could argue even a state like Minnesota might be up for grabs. And I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that's the problem for Harris. Even if she wins it by 2 to 3, that's not good news for her. And for those that are saying, well, maybe this is copia. Maybe this is just a bullshit poll. Maybe the Harris campaign is really up by 15 points. Well, according to Richard Barrison, I know some people have some problems with him, but I've heard from other people this is not far from the truth. Glenn Youngkin really believes Virginia's in play. The same guy that won the governorship back in 2021. He's not just saying this publicly. He's not just saying, we're going to win Virginia, because they always say that. Apparently in private, Youngkin is really telling Republicans, hey, we have numbers that are really good for Trump in Virginia. Maybe we should try to flip the state. And I know that just sounds crazy because it isn't 2004 anymore. It just sounds crazy to think that Trump could maybe flip Virginia. Me saying that just sounds wrong because it's 2024. It's not 2004 where you had the Bush coalition that was able to win Virginia, win Colorado, win New Mexico. Hell, just a couple years ago, everyone thought Virginia was just gone. There's no pathway for Republicans there. It was becoming too Democrat. It's over. But now there is a possibility where if Trump makes a play at Virginia, it's unlikely, but maybe he could flip the Commonwealth. Maybe there's a possibility. I'm not predicting that. I still think Harris wins it. But if you're Kamala Harris, if you're in trouble in Virginia, you're not winning North Carolina. That's their Hail Mary, by the way. The Harris campaign is banking everything on North Carolina because apparently they're down in Pennsylvania. They're looking bad in Georgia and Arizona. So their Hail Mary is North Carolina, which explains why they're attacking Mark Robinson so much. But even then, if you're losing or just up in Virginia by 2 to 3 points, hell, if you just outright lose Virginia, do you think North Carolina is going to vote Democrat? Again, these are different states. I get that, but demographically speaking, there are similar coalitions in both states. For example, Virginia has a large African-American population. Same thing with North Carolina. And if Trump is really doing better with African-American voters in Virginia, for example, do you think that's not going to happen in North Carolina? Really? Trump's going to do better with those voters everywhere, so it just becomes much more difficult to imagine him doing worse in North Carolina, but better in Virginia. Just for the simple fact there are demographics in both states that should trend nearly identical to each other, and they're trending towards Trump. See the problem here? I just don't see a scenario where Harris is doing so much better in North Carolina, but winning or barely winning Virginia. Which I'm not saying it's impossible for Harris to win North Carolina, but I just find it so unlikely that North Carolina, a Democrat-leaning state, is this close. It's within the margin of error. It's within 2 points. And there is a chance Trump could actually pull it off. Now, there is a possibility that Trump could somehow pull off the upset. I still think it's very unlikely, but there is a pathway in Virginia. Again, it's very unlikely, but if he really wants to flip Virginia, he has to do 2 things. For starters, he cannot get killed in Nova. Now, I'm not saying he has to win Nova by 15 points. Hell, he doesn't have to win Nova at all. He just can't lose Loudoun County by 25 points. He can't lose Prince William by 27, Fairfax by 41. People just forget that Youngkin didn't win these counties either, but what he did was minimize the damage. Instead of losing Loudoun County by, 25 points, I believe he lost it by like 15 or like maybe even 10. Same thing with Prince William. Instead of losing it by 27, he did like 5 to 10 points better here. Same thing in Fairfax. That's the first thing. You just cannot get killed here. Because if you do, there's really not enough votes in the rest of the state. There really isn't. But let's just assume, okay, Trump is doing way better in Loudoun, which that doesn't mean he has to win the county. Like I said, it just means instead of losing it by 25, lose it by like 15 or 20. Because that makes your pathway to victory so much easier. The second thing he has to do is absolutely run it up in the rest of the state. This is the X factor, in my opinion. It really comes down to a place like Virginia Beach. If Trump could get Youngkin margins in this part of the state, and if he's doing way better in Loudoun County and Prince William, there's a chance. There is a chance Trump could pull it off, because if he's doing 5 to 10 points better in Nova, and he just runs it up in a place like Virginia Beach, Suffolk, this part of the Commonwealth, the idea of Trump actually flipping Virginia isn't as crazy as some would expect. Again, I don't think it's going to happen, but if he's really doing better in Nova, he does better in Virginia Beach, and of course, he has to do better in the rest of the state. He has to, instead of getting like 50% of the vote in Essex, he has to get like 60%. That's just an example. He has to run it up in the rest of the Commonwealth. But if he does those things, there's a pathway here. There is a good chance Trump could actually pull off the upset in Virginia. Again, I gotta be clear that that's not my prediction. I still think Trump is gonna lose the Commonwealth. But the math is there. And in fact, early voting just started in Virginia. And I know with early voting, you have to be careful because it can be misleading. You have no clue who's actually voting. They could be partisan Democrats. I get that. But these numbers out of Virginia right now look pretty good for Trump. Now, it's not perfect. I'm not going to say everything is 100% for Trump in Virginia. He's going to win the Commonwealth. No. There are some areas like Fairfax, which is a Democrat area, where turnout looks very high, which on paper is good news for Democrats. But you got to realize one thing about early voting in the year 2024. We don't know who these people are. Now, I know it's Fairfax, so more than likely these voters are going to lean to the left. But there's an interesting phenomenon that's developing that I don't think enough people are talking about. It's, of course, the difference between low-propensity voters and high-propensity voters. For those that don't know, low-propensity voters, these are people that don't vote. Like, they might have voted 20 years ago, but that's it. While high-propensity voters, these are people that vote every single election, that they vote no matter what. And in recent years, Republicans, especially Trump, has been doing way better with low-propensity voters, while Democrats, they've been doing better with high-propensity voters. That means people that vote in every election, they lean to the left. While those that may not vote all the time, they lean to the right. Polling data proves this. Hell, even 2022 suggested that if people actually voted at higher rates, Republicans would have had a red wave. And that's why it's critical to know who these people are. Are they low-propensity voters? Are they high-propensity voters? What are they? Because I know it's Fairfax, these people are leaning to the left no matter what, but if they're low-propensity voters and they're voting for the first time in 20 years, that's probably a Trump voter, more than likely, especially compared to a high-propensity voter that votes in everything. That's why it's a big deal. But the thing is, everyone's talking about Fairfax County. They're making it sound like Fairfax County is the only county with early voting. And that's why it's good news for Democrats, because we all know Fairfax leans to the left. They're going to vote for Harris no matter what. It's over for Trump. Which, I get that. It's Fairfax, obviously, even if they're low propensity voters, they're going to lean to the left. But compared to high propensity voters, they lean to the right. But either way, the problem with this theory is we have early voting in other parts of the state, and it is not looking good for Democrats whatsoever. Look at this. Buchanan, 75% Trump in 2020. Bath, 75% Trump. And Lee's, 85% Trump. All over 200% more than the equivalent day back in 2020. Matthews County, which is 65% Trump, likely to have the highest early vote as percent of population in the whole of Virginia. So while the Fairfax numbers look good for Democrats, the numbers in Republican parts of the Commonwealth look even better. They're up 200%. They are breaking all kinds of records, way more than even Fairfax is doing. And I know it's a possibility that maybe these are Democrats, but these are Republican areas. Are you going to tell me that the only people voting in Matthews County are Democrats? I highly doubt it. And if these are low propensity voters that don't vote, that's a double whammy. Not only do these people lean to the right, if they just don't vote ever, you could probably assume these people are super Trump voters. They're going to vote for Trump at some extreme rates. That's why these numbers, yeah, Fairfax, you could argue looks good for Harris. The other data points out of Virginia look even better for Trump. But we just got to see what happens. Maybe it's a fluke, but if you're a Harris, you don't like the numbers you're seeing in Virginia right now. Anyways, folks, thank you so much for watching. If you guys did enjoy this video, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that little bell, follow the social media accounts in the description down below, and of course, join the channel today. Godspeed to all of you.